Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Icing on the Skate podcast. How's everybody doing today? We alright? So, we've got three people here today. There's me, of course. Hi. We have the wonderful Chris Gadsby, the podcast's punching bag, of course.
Hello.
And we have a lovely guest with us here today, good friend of the channel, Mr. Max Artist. Please do introduce yourself, Max.
Hi there, guys. Well, it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back talking to some familiar faces about hockey.
Stop it. So today we are going to be talking about more of the same. For those of you who don't know how this podcast works, we talk about all things Elite Ice Hockey League, all things NHL, and pretty much everything in between that catches our eye, to be honest. So I think it's fair to say this week was the first full week of the Elite League calendar. We had a lot of games last week, but teams like Belfast and Cardiff, who were playing in the Champions Hockey League, they finally now started playing some of their games. So, Chris, would you just like to take us through the scores that we've had this last weekend or so?
Yes, well, as you said, every side played Saturday and Sunday, so we had a full programme of fixtures this weekend. We'll start in the Elite League, where on Saturday the Coventry Blaze lost to the Five Flyers by 4-1, and the Dundee Stars lost to the Nottingham Panthers by 5-1. Moving on to Sunday in the Elite League, we had an absolute thrilling game in Dundee, where the Sheffield Steelers, who were where the Sheffield Steelers, who were 4-1 up, got pegged back to overtime, and they did end up winning 6-5 in overtime against the Dundee Stars, and the Manchester Storm won at home to the Belfast Giants by 2-1, again in overtime. The Cardiff Devils beat the Glasgow Clan by 5-3, and the Five Flyers beat the Nottingham Panthers by 4-2. In the Challenge Cup, 3 Challenge Cup games on Saturday. The Sheffield Steelers beat the Manchester Storm by 3-1. The Cardiff Devils beat the Guildford Flames 5-3. And the Belfast Giants beat the Glasgow Clan 6-1. And on Sunday, just the one game in the Challenge Cup, the Guildford Flames beating the Coventry Blaze by 6-3.
So, I've got to be honest, this first week, or this first proper week of all the teams playing each day, there really isn't much between these teams at the moment, is there? Of course, it's early in the season, of course, especially some of the teams that aren't Belfast or Cardiff that have had a few games to kind of find their legs. They've had some proper games, if you want. Pre-season's one thing. When you're playing against some of the best teams in Europe, that's a challenge, you know? I do find it really interesting how the teams and the matches that we had this week or this weekend, there were a lot of teams that you were like, oh wow, they actually beat them, or the Dundee game, they managed to come back and pull an overtime in that, good job. That sounded like an incredible game. Like you said, 4-1 down, managed to tie it 4-4, then 5-5, and then they lost 6-5 in overtime. So they should, for all intents and purposes, the Dundee Stars shouldn't have got a point in that game, considering they were 4-1 down, but they managed to find a way to come back and get it done. So that's pretty incredible, if you ask me. Max, talk to us. Any games that jumped out to you so far this week? Any thoughts that you're seeing early on in the season based on the results or some of the players and how well they're doing or not doing?
Well, just before we came on, I went back and looked at the lovely EIHL YouTube page and checked on the goals. The only thing I would like, the only thing I'm going to say about that really is I would like to hear commentary, not just the commentary that's on the highlights. I'd like if anybody's gone to see the CHL highlights on YouTube, they have a different guy doing a little bit of commentary over the top of it.
Yeah, it's like a voiceover rather than commentary, isn't it?
Exactly. So I'd like to see that, or have someone employed to do that. That'd be pretty good, rather than just because Guildford doesn't have a webcast, they don't have commentators, so you're just watching blank hockey.
That's
with no.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
You have crowd noise, which is.
I'll do it.
Yeah, exactly. There'll be someone to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back and watching it, you can definitely see that the Devils have taken hints from their time in playing teams in Europe. Like there was one power play goal where they passed it like 3 or 4 times to 2 guys behind the back of the net, and then dished it out in front, and then like just buried it.
Yeah.
Devils have impressed me with their play so far. I'm only going off highlights because of other teams, and then Panthers for me at the moment it's a shame, but they're only being I'm pretty sure they're just being a 500 team. They've won a game, lost a game, won a game, lost a game.
I think like if we're talking regular season, they're 2 wins, 1 loss, but with Challenge Cup, yeah, they're 500. I think.
Yeah, I'm going over all games.
It's 3 and 2.
Yeah, 3 and 2. Yeah,
3 and 2.
They've won 1 Challenge Cup game as well.
Yeah,
so pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty much a 500 team with the games that they've played so far. So it's just like, for me as a Panthers fan, I'd just like to see a little bit more consistency or like a bit more of a gel. I don't know whether that's because they seem to be figuring out whether Whistle or Carr is their number one, because they're both playing quite well at the moment. So I think they've just kind of... It's for every team, it's still a settling in period.
Yeah, I think that's a very big point that we need to kind of like clarify, especially like when we're talking about stuff as well. Both good and bad. We're very early on in the season, of course. So teams might go on really good stretches early on because they just find something, and then midway through the season it falls apart. They might start a little bit shaky, like the Panthers, for example. I mean, to be fair, they're 3 and 2, so they're not doing that badly, but they're not finding as much consistency as you, for example, might want, especially when you mentioned the goaltending tandem. It's kind of like, oh, we want to try and find the time. We want to make sure we have the right starting netminder and net. But then again, each game is worth 2 points. You don't want to fall by the wayside early on and then have the situation where, oh, we found our starting goaltender, but it's too late. So it's very much like they need to, like, for anything we talk about, especially for like the first month, the first 2 months, it's still quite early on. It could easily flip the next week, you know? So.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be opposed to the option of, I don't want to say dump Carr, because both goals haven't been really given an opportunity to start, but in my ideal scenario, we've got a guy, as a Panthers fan, we've got a guy sitting out at the moment because of our import limit. So if Whistle takes the net, why not bring Sam Gospel in as backup? If Carr can find himself another job or whatever. But yeah, you know, games are games, and then we've got that spare import can be on the bench.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it. Yeah, I guess with something like that specific context, it's very much dependent on, is it worth, like, is he playing well enough for us to essentially forfeit an import slot to have him in our net? Like, he's got to play far better than Whistle to earn the starting spot and be considered like the go-to guy. But he's also got to play well enough that, oh, if we leave one of our imports on the bench or like in the press box for a game, it's justified. And of course, very early on, Carr is somebody that I don't, as far as I'm aware, hasn't played in the Elite League so far in his career. So it might be a step of adjustment for him. Definitely more so than Whistle. So
he was brought in as the number one. Like he was like, this is our goalie. This is who we're going to, and Whistle is the guy who's going to back him up.
Yeah.
It seems to be
fair,
that Whistle's
like, although I would say like all the big arena teams have had their fair share of struggles so far already this year. Like Belfast come out, they lose 2-1 in overtime to Manchester. Like, you know, like it's easy to kind of be like, and they've got a solid goaltender. Shane Owen is incredible. He's played so well so far to start this year. So it just might be a case of a player's having a bad night, maybe the goaltender, or the forwards just can't put one past the opposing goaltender, you know? There's so many, like, variables that go into it. Like, so, Chris, what about you? Like, is there anything that's jumped out to you so far? Any kind of narratives you're keeping an eye on?
I mean, just quickly on the Panthers point, I get what you're saying in terms of, you know, bringing Gospel in as a backup. From a Panthers point of view, though, are they going to want to do that and sit him on the bench in the Elite League when he can be a netminder with leads and actually be getting game time? That's the flip side of the coin with regards to that. The thing that's jumped out at me at the moment is, and I'll pose this question to both of you, should Glasgow fans start to be getting a little bit concerned?
Why?
because, well, they're 1 from 5 in all competitions so far.
Okay.
The games they've lost, they've conceded 6, 7, 6, and 5.
Cool. Jeez. Okay.
So should they start getting a little bit concerned? I mean, they've had so Patrick Colleen has been their netminder for all of the games so
He's
far.
used to this kind of abuse, by the way. Like, he played for MK last year, so he's kind of used to facing a lot of shots and a lot of
Yeah,
goals going past
he's
him.
only had one game so far, which was their 3-2 Challenge Cup victory over Fife, where
Right.
he has more than a .85 save percentage.
Okay.
So should Glasgow fans start to get to be worried is my question.
Okay, so my opinion, and Max, you might disagree, and that's perfectly fine, of course.
Probably.
I don't think that they should panic yet, because once again, like I said earlier, it falls into the whole category of we're not even a month into the season yet. How many games are there in a season this year? Is it 50 something?
54.
54. So there's 54 games in the season, and that's not including Challenge Cup, is it? That's just normal
No.
regular season games. So Glasgow's
Yeah.
played, what, 3 regular season games?
Glasgow have only played one regular season game
okay,
against Cardiff yesterday. The rest of all Challenge Cup.
So my opinion, no, they should definitely not panic right now, because in my opinion, they've played one game. I mean, of course, Challenge Cup opinions aside, but if you think of it this way, they've played one game that actually counts so far this year. And yeah, they haven't done that well, obviously. Like you said, they're going 1 for 5, I think you said.
Yeah.
It's early days. Just because they've gone down 5, it might just be a case of they just need one thing to click, and then everything else falls into place. Or it might be a situation where the everything kind of falls apart due to the frustrations of the players potentially trying really hard and doing their best to try and win, but then they're not getting the results. So I think it's very much how the team and the coaching staff and the players bounce back from something like this will be the indication of how well they'll do for the rest of the season. Like I said, they've only played technically one regular season game so far this year. They could use the Challenge Cup games as a chance to figure out what they need to do. Like, they've played a lot of those games. They've been pretty much battered by the sounds of it for most of them. So let's go, okay, let's figure out what we need to do, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is worth pointing out as well that 4 of those have been away.
There you go, yeah.
So, there is that as well. But I mean, it doesn't get any easier for Glasgow because they've got Cardiff and Sheffield away this weekend, and then a double-header Nottingham away the weekend after.
Wow, okay. But
So
you've also got to remember that, like we've mentioned this a lot last year, but the league's not getting any easier for any team.
No.
You can't just walk in and expect 2 points, and I would say a lot more so than even just a couple of years ago. Like, you'd know the teams, it would be so easy to pick out, okay, this team's definitely going to win that game. And then nowadays, it's so difficult to actually predict which team is going to do well or actually take the W, because the parity between each sides in the Elite League is not so clear cut anymore. Of course, there is some there's still differences, of course, with the size of the budgets that some of the teams have and what they have capable of bringing in. But every team is capable of taking 2 points with them every game, which is a lot more than could be said for a couple of years ago. Anyway, Max, what do you think?
If I was a Glasgow Clan fan, I'd be slightly concerned. And the only reason being is that you've played a lot of games in the Challenge Cup, and seeing as how competitive Belfast and Cardiff have been in the CHL, how good Sheffield kind of look on paper and in some of their play, how fast Manchester can play, and especially a couple of the other Scottish teams as well, with Fife doing well and Dundee kind of pulling some wins and some decent results out of some games. I'd be a little bit concerned because I think the Challenge Cup was probably the competition they could could have done a run in and gone a little bit further. And the only thing I don't think they're going to do that well in the league because of how big other teams are compared to themselves. So I think they're going to be hard pressed to get anywhere close to winning the league. And I think they're going to be, they'll obviously, because they don't do that well in the league, they're going to find it hard in playoffs, coming up against potentially Cardiff, potentially Belfast, potentially Nottingham, or somebody who's had a stronger season than them. Okay. So I think the Challenge Cup was really kind of their trophy to kind of take a punt at and go for. And with that kind of taking a bit of a nosedive early on, then they've kind of got themselves into a sticky situation where they've got to turn up for playoffs when it comes around, and they've got to turn their league campaign into something that's achievable and that the fans would be happy with. I don't think they'd be happy with less than, I'd say, 5th place.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially given how well they did last year as well.
Exactly, and if you look, you think about how well teams did in the league last season. Yes, it was very tight, but you start putting Nottingham in the top 3, Belfast, Cardiff, Sheffield, Guildford. There's 5 teams, and I've not had Braehead Clan, Glasgow Clan run it again. Still getting used to that.
I think it is also worth mentioning, not as an excuse, but as something worth remembering. The Glasgow Clan obviously lost their head coach this off-season, and he was quite an integral part to how successful that team was last year. Obviously, like, his system clearly had some success, and he knows a lot of the local players. He knows a lot of some of the best players that we have from the UK because he coaches them with Team GB. So I kind of feel like, to an extent, Glasgow are a little bit on the back foot compared to some of the other teams in the Elite League, because they were expecting Russell to stay for at least another season. He didn't, and so they're kind of like, panic mode. It's not an excuse, obviously, but it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, wasn't he their first announcement after the end of the season? Like, oh yeah, we've got him back.
Yeah, and then he decided
to
pursue another thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think he went to the DEL, didn't he?
Yeah, DEL.
Yeah. Is that just where all of our ex-coaches go nowadays?
Apparently so.
As alongside some players.
Absolutely, which we'll talk about later.
We shall.
One thing I would also like to mention, just before we move on to like the little news sections we've got and everything. Speaking on, like you said, Chris, about should Glasgow Clan fans kind of panic a little bit? To be fair, I saw the same thing from a UK Elite League fan publication thing, talking about the Sheffield Steelers as well. So it's kind of like I think some fans
this season.
This season. Like, it's so early. There's no point hitting the panic button now, because otherwise you're just going to be disappointed for the rest of the year. Like, I'm not saying Glasgow's going to win the league. I'm not saying they're going to win the Challenge Cup, but I think, to put it into perspective again, sure, the Challenge Cup is important for the league, but they've played one regular season game. Like, could you imagine a group going, let's blow it up after one regular season game? Like, I get that they have played Challenge Cup games and they do mean something as well, but if I was a Glasgow Clan fan, and if there are any of you watching, I'd love to hear your opinion on this. Do let us know in the chat, by the way. I would be more interested in them doing better in the league than in the Challenge Cup, personally.
I mean, from my point, looking at the cup standings, the chances of Glasgow getting out of their cup group are very slim now.
But then again, that doesn't mean they can't make it to the playoffs. So
no, because they're in Group A, and Group A doesn't have a play-in.
Oh, of course, yeah. Oh, of course.
Yeah, maybe we should have 7 groups of 2 teams, and then one gets a buy-in or something. Maybe that's the way we do it next year.
Yeah. We'll talk to the Elite League and give them another crazy, ridiculous way to do it. We'll be like, so every single team gets a bye week but one, and they have to play themselves in a scrimmage, and then they get points based on that. So
they
figure
their
out.
Fans.
And we'll see how well they do. So let's move on to some of the news bits. There's not really a huge amount that's happened news-wise. No suspensions as far as I'm aware. There may be some later in the week, obviously.
Dops isn't out yet this week.
Exactly. So we haven't had any news of any suspensions just yet. We haven't really had any big news in the league at the moment. So we've got a few little small things to talk about. The first of which being a new partnership with the Elite League, a new sponsor joining the league for this season, and that's usasports.co.uk. So, this is the article written on the Elite League website. The Elite Ice Hockey League is delighted to welcome usasports.co.uk as an official partner for the 1920 season. For those of you who don't know what it is, it's a website, an online retailer, I should say. It'd be nice if I could use my words. They sell
really.
stuff from North American leagues such as the NHL, the NFL, the NBA, and the MLB. They sell all sorts of stuff like jerseys, hoods, jackets, caps, all that kind of stuff from all of the like legit brands. And they've decided to create a new segment called Saves of the Week for the Elite League this year, and that's sponsored by USA Sports. So that's pretty awesome. Getting another sponsor on board for the Elite League. I feel like that's another step in the right direction for the league. Like, it kind of feels like there's lots of little things going on behind the scenes that will help bring up the sort of, not necessarily the reputation, but the overall feel and look of the league compared to other leagues around the world, which I think is needed. Like Max mentioned earlier, and we mentioned last week, the what's it called? The highlights and stuff. It's like, I'd like there to be commentary and stuff going on with the highlights, and if they added stuff as well, like. But it's such a step up from last year to the fact that we even have highlights for every single game taking place. So the fact that we can actually go back and watch all the goal highlights without having to, like, purchase all of the webcasts and watch them back before, like, that's great. So, yeah, USA Sports has now joined the Elite League family, which is really cool. I've never used USA Sports personally, but they seem legit. I've seen them advertised on Premier Sports all the time. So, yeah, sounds good. Anything you guys want to add on that?
Yeah, I've bought from them. They also turn up to the EIHL playoffs, the Elite League playoffs in Nottingham.
Oh, really?
They've had a pop-up shop above one of the pubs, Bunkers Hill. 2, maybe 3 years on the trot.
Wow, okay.
They've had pop-up shops in Sheffield, not in the arena, but in the Meadow Hall in the shopping centre.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is, I guess they do a really good job in tailoring to their to the market that they're in. Like when they were in Sheffield in Meadow Hall, they had more NFL gear. They had like official NFL replica jerseys, merchandise, hats, T-shirts, and everything. The NHL section was a lot more condensed.
Okay.
And then when they were in Bunkers for the Elite League, obviously everything hockey.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So yeah, and they are. I've got numerous items from them. I've got a jacket. I've got a Letterman jacket. You've probably seen me wear on here. A hoodie. You've definitely seen me wear on here. The Black Vancouver one.
Nice.
I can't speak highly enough. Like their stuff is good quality and from good suppliers, and they are good. They're good and easy to work with. I haven't used them online to deliver to me.
Okay.
But with how professional that they are, that I've seen them face to face, I can't say they wouldn't be hard to work with over the internet.
Perfect. Anything else you want to add as well?
Just that, it's showing that the league is growing and growing in stature because, we're attracting these companies. Exactly. And it's only going to be positive. And
of course, a company like USA Sports, it's one of the sports that they look at, of course, the NHL. It's nice that they're a British company, but now the Elite League is growing in stature, not just within the hockey world as a whole, but in the UK. Like, more people are starting to come to hockey games in the UK. More people are starting to buy season tickets in the UK for UK games. So it's nice that it's really nice to see that it's on the up. Like, you can see, if you look properly, like the growth that's taking place. Not just from like the talent on the ice, but behind the scenes as well. So I think that's really awesome. So fair play to the Elite League for getting another sponsor on board. That's like the second sponsor they've announced in like 2.5 weeks. So fair play to them. I think that's great.
Just a quick thing on sponsors. Has the Elite League officials been sponsored by AJ because they were sponsored by Avis Cars last year. Is that kind of all fallen through? I thought that was a multi-year
it's
deal.
AJ Products now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was just like, I didn't hear that switch over. I just saw the logos.
They put out like a tweet about it and like an official news article on their website about it. I think a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
They didn't. I didn't read it properly, but I saw that they were like, "Oh, we're being sponsored by AJ Products now." So, yeah, it's all like official. Like they did talk about it. So, also Player of the Week. So, we're gonna do the Elite League's official Player of the Weeks first, and then we're gonna move on to our own. Last week, to start off season 2 of the Icing on the Skate podcast, we have introduced our own Icing on the Skate podcast Players of the Week. So we'll get into them in a moment. First, what I forgot to realise, guys, last week is that...
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, no, I mentioned this to you guys earlier, you two specifically, so we should be alright. The Player of the Week for the Elite League that I mentioned last week was actually for week 1, which was
I see.
3 games that took place that first week. So I've got 2 different Players of the Week to talk about. One for September the 11th onwards, and back, and another one just came out today. Wow, well, it was September the 11th. That's less than a week ago. That's five days ago. Okay, all right, Elite League. So, Player of the Week for week 2 is Mr. Tyson Fawcett of the Manchester Storm. So, the forward for the Manchester Storm is 26 years old. He made his debut in the EIHL with 2 goals. As the Storm beat the Dundee Stars in that opening game of the season. He joined from the Atlanta Gladiators of the ECHL from last season. That's what he did. I thought there would be more to talk about with that, but I guess not. He scored 2 goals in his debut in the Elite League against Dundee. They won the game, and he kicked off his Elite League career in style with a pair of goals. Why not? And then the one that was just announced literally like 3-4 hours ago, Player of the Week for the week we've just had, so this one's a lot more up to date, is the Fife Flyers goaltender Adam Morrison. So, he, according to the Elite League, he's had quite a start to his Elite League career in Fife. The Flyers goaltender has backstopped his team to 3 straight wins after that opening game loss, and the 28-year-old goaltender has saved over 95% of the shots he's faced, both in league and in cup action so far. So he has taken the Player of the Week for week 3. So that means we've had 2 forwards and a goaltender so far for Players of the Week from the Elite League. And, I mean, he was a big driving force as to the Flyers' win against the Panthers yesterday. So I'm not surprised that a guy like him, especially 3 straight wins on the trot, like, the goaltender's a big part for whether a team wins or loses. So that makes sense if you ask me. So those are the Players of the Week for week 2 and week 3. Anything you guys want to mention about them? Anything you want to say?
Well done.
Good. That's nice.
I think for the Five Flyers goaltender, I think he had quite an easy. Well, say an easy night.
Hello.
He let in 2 goals at the end. I was watching on Twitter. I wasn't watching the webcast. From what I saw, there was a lot of penalties headed towards the Panthers' way. So a night on the power play compared to a night on the penalty kill, I think he's going to take that over free.
You say that, but
Here comes stats, man.
Yeah. What do the numbers show?
Well, you look at the game sheet, and Panthers only had 3 penalties.
Okay.
It seemed like a lot more on Twitter.
They did only get 29 shots away.
I'd say that's about average. You want to
that's pretty average.
Yeah.
Coaches usually want to average like 10 shots a period. So
yeah, I mean he did. It's helped him having the 97.7 save percentage against Coventry because he had 45 against him there. 93.1 against Nottingham, but it was only actually 3 penalties against the Panthers. So I don't know why. It seemed like that more on Twitter, but no, it was only 3.
That's not too bad then.
They did nothing from it. But,
I listened to the coach's feedback, and he was to say that he'd just won the game, like fairly convincingly, stuck 4 goals 4 goals past the Panthers team before conceding 2. He was like, everything went really well, but there's still things we need to work on. I think that's okay.
Yeah.
That's coach being very diplomatic, but it was like, chill up, dude. You smashed the first 2/3 of the game. You obviously went to sleep a bit at the end, but you can't keep a team at bay all the time. And one of the goals from the Panthers was incredibly scrappy from Ollie Betteridge. So
Yeah, and it went under review as well, I believe.
yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
So-
One of the things that I've noticed that the league seems to be cracking down on a bit, I've seen it a couple of times now looking at the game sheet so far this year, is penalties for delaying the face-off.
Yes, I did notice a few of them. Yeah, for sure. Which
So
is
that's
good.
that'll be an interesting thing to look at throughout the course of the season.
Okay, so those were the 2 players of the week for week 2 and 3. Now we move on to our very own players of the week, the Icing on the Skate podcast players of the week. Now, I've decided to go with 2 players of the week. I've gone for a proper choice and a funny choice.
Oh, okay.
So, I went for both. So, Chris,
Was that in the game notes?
Chris, you've got somebody, right?
Yes, I have, and I won't say I was surprised by the Elite League Player of the Week,
Okay.
but I've also gone for a goaltender who actually had a better week than Morrison had.
Okay, interesting. Go for it.
Well, this is on purely numbers. So I've gone for Matt Ginn of the Manchester Storm,
Okay.
who faced 80 shots over the course of the weekend, saved 77 for 96.25 save percentage, or 0.962, which is slightly higher than Morrison's. He saved more shots than Morrison's. He faced more. Morrison only faced 74 in comparison to 80. So I've gone for Matt Ginn.
Nice. Okay. So the proper choice I've gone for is TJ Foster of the Guildford Flames. He had a pretty good weekend. He had 4 assists in 2 games, including 3 assists against the Coventry Blaze last night. And then he had 1 against Cardiff in their 5-3 loss to the Devils on Saturday. So TJ Foster, Canadian forward for the Guildford Flames. I was thinking of going for it was the forward of the Panthers. He scored 3 goals this weekend. Hare, I think it's Hare. Her?
Yeah.
Is it Samuel Hare? Is that his name?
It's Hare.
That's
it's
it.
Hare
Yeah.
in your head.
Hare. I was thinking about going for him, but then I felt like I should go for somebody that like we might not expect, or somebody that kind of flew under the radar. And I feel like TJ Foster is a good choice for somebody that flew under the radar. And for all intents and purposes, 4 points in 2 games, they're good numbers. So why not? And also, my silly choice, my funny choice. Max, you can take this one if you don't have a player. That's fine. But my choice, or this choice, will be Michael Lidhammer of the Glasgow Clan, who ended up having 12 penalty minutes yesterday against the Cardiff Devils. He contributed nothing on the score sheet. On the 14th of September, so Saturday, in the 6-1 loss to the Belfast Giants for the Clan, the only thing he did was lose 1 face-off.
Right.
According to Elite League stats. And in the game against the Devils, he had 12 penalty minutes. He was a -2. He had 1 shot on goal. And he had 2 shots in total, but 1 was on goal. And he won a face-off. So, Michael Lidhammer, the Swede from Glasgow, from the Glasgow Clan, he is my silly player of the week. 12 penalty minutes in 1 game. That's pretty impressive.
That was what, the Saturday against Cardiff?
Sunday against Cardiff.
Sunday against Cardiff. Okay.
Yeah, 12 penalty minutes according to the Elite League.
I'm interested as to what these were for.
I would imagine it was a minor and then a 10-minute major.
I'll have a look.
5.
2 plus 10.
It was yes, you're exactly right. It was a 2 plus 10 for checking from behind at 11:11.
I imagine we might hear something from the Department of Player Safety at some point then.
Yeah,
Good.
we just don't have. Obviously, they normally come out on a Wednesday, although it was a Thursday last week.
Yeah, they usually pick like a day each week to put all of them out, but they change the day every once in a while. So
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my players of the week. Is there anybody off the top of your head, Max, that you'd like to go for your player of the week?
Well, after going through and doing my homework before the
Oh, here we go. Homework's out.
I went, like I said earlier, I went on and checked all the goals and all that sort of stuff. And Mike McNabb scored an absolute beaut of a goal.
Okay.
I can't remember who they were playing against.
Who might have been play for?
He plays for the Devils. Sorry.
Okay.
Number 89.
Okay.
He rushes it out of the zone, up the wing. Gets into the zone, does a nice little touch pass to his player in the middle. Player in the middle taps it straight back to him, and he just rips a one-timer.
That was against Glasgow last night.
Yeah, I thought it was.
1 goal, 1 assist, but still
got 12
-1 on the
penalty
plus
minutes.
minus.
Maybe that's why he got the 12 penalty minutes, for getting annoyed at the goal.
I'm surprised that you went, if you wanted someone with a lot of penalty minutes, that you went with him.
Why, who else was there?
I'm not telling you, it's part of the quiz.
Oh. God damn it, Chris. Okay, so those are our icing on the skate players of the week for week 3/week 2, because it's the second. It's the second one. It's week 2 for us. All right, Elite League, deal with it. So we introduced last week also our lovely end of week quiz. Which
we decided that the end of season quiz went so well last year that we were going to do a small weekly one, didn't we?
Yeah. So let's do let's do another end of week quiz, because you guys seem to enjoy it. I quite enjoyed it, even though I got 2 out of the 3 questions wrong.
I was going to say you only got 1 point. You got the easy question last week.
But still, that's better than nothing.
That's true. That's very true.
So,
right, Max.
Let's give it a go.
Since this is, odd man versus guests.
Yep.
Quiz set 1 or quiz set 2, Max?
Oh, I like even numbers. Let's go number 2.
Okay, 2. So the way this works is the easy question's worth 1, the medium is worth 2, and the hard is worth 3 points. So, Max,
wait, before you do, the question about penalty minutes, is that in his set of questions or mine?
Doesn't matter, we'll find out.
That's in Max's.
Thank goodness. Okay, carry on.
Can I also please say, can both of you please get rid of the Excel document?
Oh, I don't have it up. I've got
close the Excel document.
I'm just looking at OBS right now, so go for it.
Yep. Right, Max. Which is the only side to currently have 0% on the power play in all domestic competition matches after again failing this weekend?
Oh, that's a tough one.
It's not 5, because they did actually score on the power play, even though the coach was upset about it. Don't know why he would be.
I mean, they scored a goal. They're not allowed to do that.
Exactly. they've got an extra man. What the hell?
That's not fair.
No, apparently they were static. Who would have? So up until now, or for just this week.
Well, they failed again this week, but
they're running 0% for the entirety of the season.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Across all competitions.
Yeah.
Because they've only played Challenge Cup and.
Well, it takes the Devils and the Giants out of it.
Yeah.
Well, it does, yeah. I suppose that's true, yeah. I did say domestic though.
Fair enough.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. I'm going to go with Manchester Storm.
Right. Okay. Well, it was actually 5.
Oh,
what? They scored a goal on the power play.
Not according to the game sheets, they didn't.
Well, according to the highlights that I watched, they did. They were up a man. He shot from the point, went right through everybody.
Well, was it just as the time expired?
Oh, if it is, then that is.
Do you want me? I shall have a look. Let me So
We need the
when did the
referee to come in. Ref, under review.
Yeah, let's.
That must have been in this game. No, I'm sorry, Max. You're quite a way off there. The closest they got to scoring was about 2 minutes after a penalty,
Oh, okay.
according to the game sheets. So that's no point for Max.
So
blind donkeys do the game sheet in the AHL. I'm saying.
So if it turns out you were right, just blame the league. It's fine. You can't blame Chris. That's all that matters.
They are now 0 for 13 on power play.
Oh, that's
right.
bad.
The coach can be upset about that.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right, odd man. 2 sides went pointless this weekend. Glasgow and who?
Glasgow and who? Well, it's not Dundee. Coventry.
Yes, well done.
Boom.
Point. Right,
Hey.
Max. Medium question, 2 points.
Okay.
You don't have to name them, but how many teams have a 100% record in the league?
Oh.
You just want the number.
Well, if you want to name them, you can, but I'm only after the number.
Okay.
That's a good question. I like that one.
Yeah. 100% record in the league. I'm going to go with 3.
Correct. Yes, 2 points. 2 points. The 3 teams in the league are Fife, Manchester, and Cardiff.
Okay.
Right. This is a cup question for you, odd man.
Damn it.
Everyone has now played a cup game. Name the 2 sides who are currently in the play-in places.
What? God,
Basically, they have to play the extra game.
Basically, who's currently bottom of Group B and C?
Bottom. B and C, so not Group A.
No, not Group A. They don't get a play-in place.
Shit. So, bottom of Group B.
Bottom of Group C.
Okay. So I'm going to say the bottom of Group B.
Yeah.
Oh no, I'm going to say one of them's Manchester.
Right.
Because they haven't played any games yet.
Yeah.
Right.
And the bottom of the other group. Can you just remind me who's in each group? Is that allowed?
Yeah, I can. Okay, I'll remind you
who's
of.
In group C? Who's in Group C?
Mind you, I should tell you Manchester have played a game in the cup, but that's by the by. Okay, so Group B. Group B is Cardiff, Guildford, and Coventry. Group C is Sheffield, Nottingham, Manchester.
Say that again.
I know who I would.
Right. So Group B is Cardiff, Guildford, and Coventry.
Coventry. It's Coventry and Manchester.
Yes, correct. 2 points.
Yeah.
Hey.
2 points. Right. Hard questions worth 3 points. Max.
Yep.
Who spent the most time in the penalty box this weekend?
Odd man.
Or who had the most penalties?
Yep. Considering the amount of time I edited my last video, yeah, it basically was being in the penalty box.
Yeah.
I'll give you bonus points if you get the number as well.
if we get the what?
If you get the number.
It wasn't Lidhammer.
Yeah. Although he could play really well on a rec team with those sort of stats.
He lost a face-off. That's something.
Hey, if you win a face-off in rec league, you're basically a elite league player. So, well, you feel like one anyway. I'm going to be honest with you, I have no idea.
You don't know.
Say someone.
Okay. Yeah, just pick anybody.
Give it a go.
Oh.
Chris Gadsby.
What, you reckon I did?
Well, maybe.
Only if you're playing for the Lions.
Right, you giving up then?
Yeah, there's no way I'm going to guess the other.
Okay. It was Brett Ferguson of the Guildford Flames.
Yeah, I wouldn't know
Who
that.
he got 34 penalty minutes against Cardiff on Saturday evening. He got 2 for holding, 40 seconds in, then a 5 for fighting, and then a 2 + 5 + 20 for high sticking, then fighting.
Oh, well, he didn't really spend the most amount of penalty minutes in the box. He got, he got
That's a good
seven.
point.
He got
That's a good point.
He got 7 minutes in the box and ejected from the game.
Yeah, I know.
So it was Lidhammer.
No, he got 2+10. So depends on when the penalty was.
Sat in the
I know,
box
I
for
should-
12, surely.
I should have reworded that for who had the who had the
accrued
most penalty minutes. Yeah.
This
I
quizmaster
understand.
sucks.
Oh,
I've got 2 points. It's fine by
No,
me.
you're doing great. I know
Right.
my question's going to be absolutely impossible, so...
well,
You say that.
right. So we've seen some low shots on goal totals this week, old
Oh,
man.
no.
Which
I'm going to
side,
take a guess. Either.
which side only managed 15 on Saturday? And no, it wasn't the Lions.
It was my rep team.
15 shots for on Saturday.
Who only had 15 shots on Saturday?
Did they score on them shots?
Eh?
Was there a goal in them shots? If
There was a goal in the shots.
wow.
Just a goal.
So they had 15 shots.
Okay, but one goal.
There was one goal.
Okay. I'm trying to think of all of the games that ended something one on Saturday. I can't remember them.
I've got
I'm
my
going to
answer.
say,
I think
this
it
is
might
a
be
complete
wrong.
guess.
Mhm.
I'm going to say, the Glasgow Clan.
Oh, he nearly got a full house on the weekly quiz and he's failed at the final hurdle.
I've just before you say, I've put Coventry.
No, you're wrong as well.
No, okay.
It was
Worth a shot.
it was Manchester.
Oh, I would never have gone Manchester.
Only had 15 shots in their 3-1 defeat to Sheffield.
Oh, okay.
So at the end of the weekly quiz, it is a win for the host over the guests, as Oddman wins by 3
Nice.
points to 2 there.
So that means I have 4 on total this season.
You've got 4 over for the season, yeah.
4 out of a possible 10.
12.
12. That's not good.
Yeah.
That's really bad. Repping a solid 33%.
That's a good power play percentage.
Better than 5.
Better than 5. Coach will be happy.
Yep. Well, unless I score a goal, then, you know. Okay, so that was it for the Elite League so far this week, or for the last week of play. Yeah, a lot of games took place, but nothing in terms of news. So there isn't really much point talking about it anymore, because there isn't really much to talk about. So let's move across the pond to the National Hockey League, where the big talking points for this last week are restricted free agents finally deciding to sign so they don't miss training camp. Pretty good idea, not going to lie. And training camps and preseason underway. So I'll start with the preseason point. There was one game yesterday. The games are continuing today for preseason. So basically every team is playing games against other NHL teams, usually in their division. Preseason, they're trying out a lot of players that may or may not be on the roster. Players they're wanting to get another look at and see if they have a spot on the roster, or players that they want to try and find reasons not to keep them on the roster if in an actual game situation, because there's only so much you can tell from scrimmages and team practices and stuff. So
Yeah.
there's preseason going on. Who is it? What's his name? Has Chris gone?
No.
No,
Oh,
but I am now over both of
You
the
are huge.
cameras.
Chris, where
I
have
am
you
a
gone?
Big man.
I've not gone anywhere. Max can still hear me.
Your webcam's disappeared.
No, it hasn't.
Yes, it has.
Well, it hasn't. It hasn't on my. I can see
I mean,
myself. It must be
we've
your
just
end.
We've just got Max's giant face over where you're supposed to
Hang on. Let me
be.
turn it off and on again. See if that helps.
Technical
I like
issues.
how my mouth is in
Technical
one
issues.
camera and my ear is in the other camera.
Literally, I can see myself on my screen in the little window, and I can see Max. And
We can't see you, mate.
No.
oh, well, that's just. I don't understand it because it's still on and it's still working my end.
I love the technical
So-
difficulties we have on this show. It's actually wonderful.
Oh, I see. Yeah, we've got Max's mouth where I
No, I
am.
wasn't
and
kidding. So while Chris decides to figure that out, we'll have a lovely image of Max's face at the top. I'll just
I'll
finish
try and
off
get into
what I was saying.
I've turned it up and on again. I
Try
don't
turning it off and
understand.
on again. So anyway,
at least my face is there.
NHL preseason. So a game took place between the Vegas Golden Knights and the Arizona Coyotes yesterday, and the Vegas Golden Knights took a 6-3 victory, I believe, against the Coyotes. Max Pacioretty scoring a hat-trick in that game, and also a really nasty hit by Keegan Colasar of the Vegas Golden Knights on Aaron Ness, I believe, of the Coyotes. That's been the big talking point from that game. The first thing I saw about it when I woke up this morning was, oh, there's been a big hit already. Is it like a dirty hit? I mean, the player was kind of falling down and the guy was finishing his check. It's kind of one of those unfortunate incidents, but it was similar to a suspension to a Panthers player we had last year, and it's kind of like, and it was the hit on Mosey, I believe.
Really?
And yeah, we were just kind of like, it's unfortunate, it sucks, but then again, the player's damned whatever he does. If he lets up on the hit, the other team keeps possession of the puck. If he doesn't, then the hit gets made. So it's just unfortunate the guy was falling.
It's pre-season. Like,
Well, no,
come
'cause
on, it's pre.
The problem is now the guy left the game. I'm pretty sure he's got concussion symptoms, and he was a guy that
Exactly,
was he was looking. I think Aaron Ness was a guy that was getting a long look at this training camp, so it's kind of left a bit of a bitter taste in the mouths of some Coyotes fans or some NHL fans. I'm not here to pass judgment on it. I've seen it. I'm not quite sure what. Like, I'm not quite sure if there's going to be any action taken from it. I highly doubt it. Oh, we are dropping frames like crazy. That's helpful.
We are. I think it's because Chris was trying to reconnect.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I never went anywhere. I don't
Oh,
understand
hello.
why my camera's not working.
Neither do I. Hopefully we'll... Yeah, I think we're getting back up in terms of the... Oh, are we? No, we're dropping frames again. This is wonderful. I'm having a great time
Honestly,
here, guys.
everything my end is normal. Oh, he's gone.
Interesting.
Oh no, he's not.
No. I don't quite know what's going on here. It's saying we're getting plenty of kilobytes a second, but we're still dropping frames. So that's helpful.
Everything
Okay,
my
right.
end is normal. I don't understand.
I think it's back again properly. Sorry about this, guys. Technical difficulties. You know it's us. It always happens at some point. So
It does. It's not my fault this time.
yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of disappeared. but
Well,
other
it
than
was
that-
your camera that went.
Yeah, but it's still working for me.
So, to let you guys know what's going on in terms of the NHL, in terms of the schedule for preseason games, there's some games taking place again tonight, I believe. I'm just trying to get them up for you so we can see which ones they are. I did have them up here, but they disappeared, so that's helpful.
Oh,
okay,
he's
so
broken it.
today we have Florida against Nashville in about an hour and a half's time. We have
Wow.
Boston against the Devils, Chicago against Washington, the Devils against the Canadians as well, so that's a split squad clearly. The Islanders against the Flyers, the Penguins against the Sabres, and another split squad, Florida-Nashville, St. Louis versus Dallas, Vancouver versus Calgary, Edmonton versus Winnipeg, and another Calgary-Vancouver split squad as well. So plenty of preseason action. Some of them are televised or able to watch, some of them are not. So keep an eye out, see which ones you might be interested in watching. I know the New York Rangers start their preseason against the Devils on Wednesday, and I'm very excited to see a lot of these young prospects having a go at it. Adam Fox, Trouba coming in, Panarin, Kako. Hopefully some of them will play on Wednesday. I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So that's everything to do with preseason and training camps and stuff. It's all very much like media only and players only at the moment because the season hasn't quite got underway. The stuff I really wanted to talk about... Oh, here he is. He's on the other side.
Oh, I'm back.
Oh,
What?
You're on the other side. Hello.
I've literally,
bear
honestly,
with
I
me.
haven't touched a single thing.
And now you're here. Welcome back to the podcast. Boom.
I haven't touched a thing, and
My
it's
live
just
streaming
come back.
skills back in their finest hour. Okay, so...
Okay, right. I never actually went on sound, did I? It was just video.
Yeah. So, I'm just going to run through a load of contracts, give my quick thoughts on them, and I'm going to ask you guys what you think as well. So, with training camp beginning, we of course have a lot of players going, oh, the team's on the ice. I kind of want to be there as well, because I don't want to have a William Nylander situation where I get signed halfway through the season and then I'm clearly not ready to go. So, we have an extension to talk about first. Jared Spurgeon of the Minnesota Wild has agreed on a 7-year, $53.025 million contract extension. He agreed that on Saturday with the Wild. Has an average annual value of $7.575 million a season.
It's not bad, is it?
We have, the 29-year-old defenseman Spurgeon, career high in goals with 14, assists with 29, and points with 43 in 82 games last season. This is another big contract that's been added on to Parise, Suter, and Matt Zuccarello. So, this is going to be interesting to see how the Minnesota Wild try to rebuild when they're not really rebuilding. I mean, Spurgeon's a guy they should have locked up, and they've locked him up. So, of all the players to have given a contract like this, good choice for Jared Spurgeon. That's my thoughts on that. Then we'll leave him to the end. We then have Charlie McAvoy of the Boston Bruins finally deciding to sign with the Bruins again, which is good. He's one of the list of those restricted free agents that are either all holding out because their agents think they can get them a lot more money. We're going to be going to a lockout if players keep getting paid like this. That's all I'm saying. Charlie McAvoy signed a 3-year, $14.7 million contract with the Bruins on Sunday. Has an average annual value of $4.9 million a season. Very similar to the Zach Werenski contract that he signed with the Blue Jackets. It's very much some of the key players in this have now signed contracts, so the dominoes are going to fall, I would expect. Charlie McAvoy, 21 years old, he had 28 points in 54 games last season and 8 points in 23 playoff games. He's got his contract sorted out. He's going to training camp with the Bruins. He led the Bruins in average ice time in both the regular season and the playoffs. Then we had from the Philadelphia Flyers, Ivan Provorov, signing a 6-year, $40.5 million contract with the Philadelphia Flyers. Average annual value of $6.75 million and runs through the 24-25 season. He had a bit of a down year last year, did the 22-year-old defenseman. 26 points in 82 games, but he led Philadelphia in ice time, and he's led them in ice time for each of his 3 NHL seasons, which is very interesting. A young, up-and-coming player that over the next few years could really cement himself as one of the top defenders in the league. He's led Philadelphia in ice time the last 3 years, so that's pretty impressive. He's got a new coach to play under in Alain Vigneault. Good luck with that, Flyers. And then, finally, the last big contract, the one that kind of the entire hockey world, the entirety of the Toronto sports media was waiting for. Mitch Marner has finally signed a contract. Finally!
Yeah!
6 years, $65.3 million with the Maple Leafs. So it has an average annual value of $10.9 million a season.
I wish I'd got that.
Yeah. There's some... he came out and said, I think, to the NHL or some reporters that it was then reported on the NHL that he had received some offer sheets early on in the free agency, but he never wanted to look at them at all. He always wanted to be in Toronto. He always wanted to play in front of the Maple Leafs. He's 22 years old. He had 94 points last season in 82 games. He was 4th in the NHL in assists and 11th in points. He had 4 points in 7 playoff games. And I believe he's led the Maple Leafs in points for the last 2 seasons. Yeah, I think so. And he was obviously on a line with John Tavares. Now, very similar to my thoughts on the William Nylander situation last season, I don't want to hear about Mitch Marner or his contract for the next 5 years. Okay, I'm glad the guy got his money. Fair play to him. He's been a solid player.
Now let's move on.
I can understand why he's got so much money. I can understand because the big question was Marner wanted more term, and the Maple Leafs, from what I'm aware of, Marner wanted a longer term. He didn't want to do a bridge contract. The Maple Leafs wanted to do a shorter contract, similar to the McAvoy or the Werenski contract, like in terms of like length and half the amount of money, so that he becomes a UFA at like 26, 27, and then he becomes the next John Tavares of the free agency world. But yeah, I'm glad the dude got his money. Fair play to him. He's going to be earning a shit ton of money for the next few years. Good on him. I just don't want to see anything on social media or anything related to Mitch Marner and his contract. It's been going on since last year. It's so boring. Like, you know that there's been a slow news week when all they can talk about is Mitch Marner. Like, even when there's nothing happening, they still write about 3 articles on him every day. It's like, Mitch Marner ate here today. Does that mean he's staying in Toronto? It's like, shut up, please. So, Marner's got his contract. That means they have, I believe, like $38 million. I'm completely going off the top of my head. So, Matthews, Tavares, Nylander, and Marner are taking up about $40 million in cap space. I'll just let that sink in for you. And bearing in mind, next season, I think they have 1 defenseman signed and 1 goaltender, which I believe isn't Frederik Andersen signed. Good luck, Maple Leafs. If you manage to figure this out, then fair play. I will be incredibly impressed. But I see a lot of first-round exits in your future. So, guys,
at least for the cup, innit?
Let's go with Max first. Thoughts? Any of those contracts? All of them? Give your thoughts.
To be honest with you, they kind of signed for what I thought they were going to sign for. They've all just kind of like gone, oh yeah, I'm just going to stay with this team and, kind of figure it out and make it work. I'm a little bit excited. Well, I say excited. I think Philadelphia fans can be excited about about Provorov.
Yeah, Provorov is going to be a solid player.
Yeah, get him locked down and sort out your coaching problems, because I know just as much as Rangers fans do that Alain Vigneault is great.
I mean, he took us to a cup final. He took you to a cup final, but couldn't get us over the hump. So
yeah,
like I like that part of him. Like, that was great.
Yeah, he did well right up until the last little bit.
Yeah, like
when he didn't do well.
My thoughts on Alain Vigneault is like he is. I always feel like he's a season or 2 behind in like how the NHL or how to win in the NHL. You know, like because when the Rangers went to the Cup final, they were basically bullied around by the Kings physically. Like it was still in that kind of early part of this decade where the more size you have, the bigger you can push people around. The easier, the more successful you're going to be. And the Kings did that to a T. That's why they won 2 Stanley Cups. They also had some great talent on their roster, obviously. But like they were good at throwing the body, especially in the playoffs where like you see players get a lot more physical in the playoffs. They really stepped it up a notch. Whereas like the latter half of this decade has been more about speed and skill and quick movement. And then I feel like the same with the Canucks, like back in 2011, like he's almost there, but he's not quite got the right strategy, or things just don't fall into place for him, you know?
Yeah, to be fair to him, in the Vancouver series, that was just a battle between Tim Thomas and Roberto Luongo, and I think it came down to most games 1 goal.
And the Horton hit. Yeah, that was a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I'd say there are little storylines in there, but the main one that kind of came down to game 7 was a big battle between Tim Thomas and Roberto Luongo, and who was going to crack. And unfortunately, it didn't go Vancouver's way. But that's why you play hockey, because you get to them stages.
Yep. I'd have loved for us to be doing this podcast when those 2 were in the final, just to have you two going at it.
I'd have been pulling my hair out also. I think I watched from game 3 onwards. I stayed up. Like, it was back at a time when I wasn't doing silly hours at work, and I'm not trying to be an adult. So
it's not fun.
I was at college at the time the Rangers were in the final, and I'd just like gone on study leave, so I was able to stay up and watch all of the games. I mean, I was half
supposed to be
game,
revising.
But... I did during the day, and then I stayed up and watched hockey, you know? And then got my heart broken by Alec Martinez, but we're not going to talk about that now.
He's gonna be the next jersey I buy. Just
Please
just
don't.
for you.
Please don't.
Yeah, do it.
It's gonna be
Do
Stanley
it.
Cup patch on it as well.
Alec Martinez.
So at least I support a side that hasn't got there for about half a century.
We'll give you another 50 years. You'll get there
you don't
eventually.
know the heartache, Chris. You don't know the heartache.
Yeah, but if you were never
You've not
there, do
been
you
there,
really
man.
feel pain? Like, if you were never that close?
Yeah.
Blissful in your ignorance, Chris.
I know. Oh, I know. I
You just
know.
get to the playoffs, shit the bed to Boston, and you know you had a good season.
And then sign a load of players for, like, minimum league contracts, because that's all the cap space you've got for the next, like, 7 years. Yeah, Carl Dubas!
Life in the middle.
We're going to re-sign for enough because he's worth $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, he's not got a team at the moment, so get him on a PTO.
Exactly.
Chris, any thoughts about the contracts? Anything you want to mention?
Not really. I mean, when we've kind of covered a lot talking about it for a quarter of an hour or so, and like you say, it's kind of
Yeah.
it's what was expected,
Yeah.
roughly.
The only issue I have is there are so many players getting $10+ million a year.
I can see where you're going with a
Contract.
lockout. I really can.
The good thing is, from the NHL side, they've said, we like the collective bargaining agreement at the moment. We're going to stick with it, like, for another year. I think for another year, yeah. And then we're essentially waiting on the Players Association to be like, yeah, we agree. Essentially, there could be a lockout at some point within, like, probably next season. I mean, that's kind of, from as far as I'm aware, I mean, my history, like, my facts on this aren't, like, up to date completely, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the chat, but the massive contracts and the big buyouts that were being made because the people didn't live up to the contracts was one of the driving factors into the last lockout. And then that's why they had to give out 2 compliance buyouts. To be like, yep, you can have these 2, and then after that, be careful who you give big contracts to. I mean, of course, it's a juggling act, isn't it? It's a juggling act of, we have a player like Mitch Marner who scores almost 100 points a season. We need to lock him up. We want to lock him up long term, make sure he stays with us because he's 22 years old. He hasn't nearly hit his peak yet, as well, provided things stay well and there's no unsuspecting surprises or whatever. But at the same time, it's like, oh, the salary cap hasn't actually really gone up that much this year. Compared to last year, as a fraction increase. Like, it went up a lot less than GMs were hoping for. So there's a lot of sort of GMs going, we're still like $2 million over the cap, which is fine until a couple of days or like a week before the NHL season starts. And then it's all about long-term injured reserve and chucking players down to the minors and throwing those depth players away to other teams. So yeah, it didn't go as well as teams would have wanted. Obviously, the amount of revenue that they gained this year wasn't as much as they were hoping for, perhaps. But yeah, it's going to be interesting this next year to see if there's going to be a lockout or not. I wouldn't be surprised. I hope there's not. I don't want a lockout, but I wouldn't be surprised. Wow. I speak of that. Something's literally just come through on my iPad. CBA remains intact. The NHL Players Association has decided not to use its option to reopening the collective bargaining agreement. So the bargaining agreement will now run through until 2 years. 2 years from now. 3 years from now.
The Icing on the Skate podcast.
Boom.
Breaking news from
folks.
around the hockey world.
So yeah,
You heard it here
it'll run
first,
through
literally.
Your place to find it first via
Perfect.
Twitter.
Yeah,
the
via
agreement-
Twitter, as long as we're looking at the iPad.
No, this was from the NHL, so it's obviously been reported on Twitter probably first. But the agreement now runs through September 15th of 2022. So, there you go. I mean, that couldn't have been better timed if I'd asked it. Like, bloody hell. So there's not going to be a lockout for the next 3 years,
Yeah.
folks. Don't worry, guys.
The NHL media team are obviously listening to this, and we're just waiting over
Clearly.
the tweet button.
Clearly.
No,
So,
it was either that or they're looking to copyright strike him again.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Forget everything I just said. There's not going to be a lockout for another 3 years. So, Good job,
That was a
NHL.
good use of
Thank you,
5
Players
minutes on it,
Association,
right.
for sticking with it. Good job, lads. Anyway,
Moving.
is there anything else you want to talk about contracts-wise? Because that's, I mean, I've said everything
about
I
it.
needed to. Oh, I would like to mention something. Remind me at the end for audience questions to talk about leads. Just remind me to talk about leads at the end.
Okay.
So, Brits abroad. Da 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 da.
Da-da-da-da-da.
So, for those of you who don't know how this works, there's a few British coaches, executives, head coaches, players now playing abroad. Hockey's kind of getting a bit more attention nowadays in the UK, and we're getting a bit more exposure, and other leagues around the world are kind of going, oh, okay, let's get some players from there. So, yeah, which is great. So we're just going to run through all of the different players and coaches around the world, talk about their stats a little bit, because I know some of you might be interested to know what happens to them. I'm very interested to kind of keep up to date and see how they're doing, because if they do well, that means it reflects well on British hockey. So why not?
It saves you making a what happened next video for every single one of them per year.
Perfect.
That
there
is
you go.
true.
So, Chris, give us the
Yeah.
stats, son.
I should point out that we have a group chat and we list all the topics that we're going to talk about. And then it gets to Brits abroad, and then in brackets, in all capital letters, Chris gets stats!
You're the stat
Chris,
man.
do work.
You know,
Chris, do
yeah.
work.
I am the stat man. Right, okay.
I'm the
So,
eye candy, and you're the guy with the knowledge, right?
right, okay.
I'm the
Right,
guy with the
so,
first-hand experience.
Yeah.
yes, we'll start with Liam Kirk.
Go for
He's
it.
been invited to the Arizona Coyotes training camp.
Yep.
Right, moving on.
Hopefully, we'll get to see him play in a preseason game. I'm holding out
Hopefully.
hope. It's not likely, but I'm holding out hope.
A split squad
Right.
one, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
It depends if he
Right,
gets cut before.
we've got Paul Thompson and his Schweinega Wild Wings.
Yeah, Tomo.
They went 4-3 in preseason, so not bad. But he's lost both his opening 2 games in the DEL, including they conceded 10 on opening night.
They did. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
And they currently sit bottom of the table.
Understandable. Because they
Tomo,
lost to
what's the score?
Wolfsburg yesterday, didn't they?